I saw constant battle. Man fought demon. Lightning fought volcano. Geysers of molten brass fought lakes of steaming blood. There was no respite, no peace. That which emerged victorious was immediately set upon by another foe even more terrible. It was blood, spraying and jetting, and skulls adding to a throne that pierced the red skies. It was endless screams of rage and fury made incarnate. It was glorious. Throughout the entirety of human existence, mankind has wrestled with its primal desire to conquer and dominate. Waging untold wars throughout its millennia of history, mankind's prominence as the true inheritors of the stars was won not through divine favor nor primacy of existence, but through blood, sweat, and toil. For today, we shall elucidate a manifestation given rise with humanity's ascension. A primordial force empowered to the point of championing the act of slaughter itself, having gorged on the rampages wrought throughout the stars. The Lord of Skulls, Rage and Blood, Khorne. Though the Pantheon of Chaos cannot be claimed to be exclusively linked to humanity's collective psyche, as is the case for the being known as She Who Firsts and its Eldar counterpart, the nascent elements of such terrible entities existed long before mankind rose from the primordial soup of terror. Thoughtless notions of murder and battle in its primal form, as humanity began to evolve into sentient beings, its first glimmers of consciousness started to develop. Though none can identify an exacting marker for birth of the being known as the Blood God, speculation asserts that such a being arose during the earliest years of the Age of Terror. Known colloquially as the Middle Ages by the historians of Old Earth, regardless if the Blood God began its impetus with the first human's brains dashed across a rock of its Homo sapiens past, this era of bloodshed fed it to bursting with acts of violence unknowingly made to its glory. The thralls of chaos bickering endlessly as to the true primogenesis of such a foul deity. Though many are divided on such tawdry debates, none can deny that the Blood God stands as the oldest and mightiest of the Pantheon of Chaos. Its subjects content to spill gore in its name, with no faculties remaining for nuanced debate. Every act of anger, jealousy, possession, territorial dispute, or meting out of violence for injustice of a starving belly feeds the Lord of Skulls' insatiable need for slaughter. Each and every faction waging war among one another, paying homage to the Blood God, whether intentional or not. It is no wonder why in an age of endless warfare, the master of the Brass Citadel has gorged itself to bursting with offerings and worship. As empires, fiefdoms and kingdoms rose and fell to the relentless regime changes and social rejuvenations throughout humanity's history, each was galvanized by conflict and struggle. From the evolution of bipedal man, of sharp stones to steel and slingshots to muskets, each era of humanity inexorably advanced its arms and armaments to better kill one another until foes beyond its own imagination beckoned mankind to settle new scores. Through conflict, mankind reached for the heavens and declared itself master of all it surveyed, purging the stars of long crestfallen Xenos empires and culling those who existed only to sow discord and misery throughout the stars. Might made right, as even the greenskins faltered, the biological weapons made only to kill, bested by the upstart empire of the master of mankind. Yet as humanity set its sights upon cutting ties with the Immaterium and casting off the shackles of battle to bask in endless peace, the Blood God spat upon the species' hopes of achieving a prosperous future. Reluctantly allying with its junior kindred, Tzeentch, the Changer of Ways, Nurgle, the Plague Father, and most hated of all, Slaanesh, the Lord of Excess, the Blood God, as the most overt in meddling with mortal affairs, began to whisper into the minds of susceptible pawns. Requiring no promises of enlightenment, nor power to those who listened to its call, Khorne demanded blood purely for the sake of glory, at the expense of his chosen's hated nemesis. Relying on ingrained tendencies to seek justice for past slights, vindication of one's own strength, protection of the weak, or liberation of the downtrodden, Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows, only that it flows. Each feast made in honor of planets liberated by the Emperor's angels, relieved breath of mortal defenders protecting an outpost from greenskin tyranny, or righteous purge of Eldar hovels to pave the way for humanity's reclamation of the stars, empowering the Blood God. Its influence felt at every crucial and minor outcome of every conflict waged by mankind. From atop its skull throne, formed of the bones of despots, saviors, tyrants, and mewling pacifists, Khorne encourages sibling infighting, competitions of martial skill, or escalation of arguments. Its presence not wholly malevolent, Khorne spurns those who commit actions requiring guile or deception. For those unwilling to face their opponents head-on, whether by blade or barbed word, are beneath its favor. With the calamitous events of the Horus Heresy reaching a fever pitch, the Blood God and its kindred openly revealed their presence to the galaxy at large. No longer content with lurking in the shadows during the Emperor's height of power, the Blood God manifesting in several forms throughout its interference with mortal souls, most commonly propagated by madmen and savages who give praise to the Lord of Rage, and its visage atop a throne of skulls. Broad-shouldered, muscular, and humanoid in form, this 100-feet-tall Goliath bears a face laced with deep scars, hidden beneath a heavily armored helmet. Clad in baroque, blackened brass armor, which while ornate nonetheless bears signs of battle, rust, and unremovable bloodstains. Were a mortal man to gaze upon such an avatar of hatred, they would surely succumb to outbursts of rabid frenzy. The words uttered from its mouth, laced with growls of bottomless fury, its every utterance witnessed by decapitated, fleshless heads adorning the flanks of its macabre seat of power. Its throne room littered with skulls of thousands of long-extinct species, as well as those still trapped within a cycle of endless war. The insurmountable material trophies accrued by the Blood God shall regardless never sate its need. By its side, a gargantuan two-handed blade of many names sits, the Woebringer, end of all things, the Warmaker, capable of rending reality itself to unleash his endless blood legions into the mortal realm. The cult of Khorne, pledging to offer more skulls for the Skull Throne, their spilling of blood for the Blood God to temporarily quench its thirst for slaughter as the pile it sits atop grows slowly but exponentially taller. Yearning to sunder friend and foe alike should the din of battle never silence, Khorne's servants tread the eightfold path in praise of the number to which the Blood God favors, exemplifying an Ouroboros of never-ending destruction. While names of power hold great significance to the denizens of the Warp, so too do numbers. The soldiers of the Blood Legions arranging themselves in perfectly dividable cohorts to reflect the 8 towers that ring the Brass Citadel. Each Khornate demon allowed to embark upon the material realm, tasked with conducting 8 duties before being banished back to the Blood God's domain. Should they fail in their duty, a demon may never again be rewarded with a physical form. The 8th wave of the Blood Legion's battle lines, always the most potent. The sacred number of Khorne is carved upon the flesh of cultists and seers, as the proven prophecy that the 8th war of a campaign always hearkens the satisfaction of the Blood God's wrath. Unwilling to stoop to the temperament of its lesser kindred, who are content to skulk in shadows beyond the gaze of their enemies, Khorne forthrightly charges headfirst into battle, so that its foes may gaze upon its majesty before being torn from their mortal coil. A true force of nature, exemplifying the tenets of the survival of the fittest. Icons such as predatory animals have often given praise to Khorne for much of humanity's bloody past. The Orc species, though devoted to the influence of their own strange deities, Gork and Mork, their loyalties end where their need for battle ebbs. For it is by no means rare for greenskins or even Xenos, such as the Rakghoul, to pledge their fealty to the architect of annihilation. The endorsement of the Blood God, enabling assassins of Underhive gangs to turn against their conniving masters to better suit its agenda. Even its chosen herald, Kharn, benefits from invulnerability to ranged weaponry to better test the mettle of the betrayer against his foes. Demanding blood alone as payment for its gifts, Khorne's obsession with parting ichor from the flesh of its victims shall not be denied, even should it need to be prized from those who fail to uphold their pledge to its service. The exsanguinated husks of unsuccessful thralls, stripped of their souls before being parted from their skulls to be tossed onto the pile of the Skull Throne. In the eyes of such pawns, their treatment is fair, for Khorne is explicit in the pacts it makes. Its steady and reliable praise, allowing the rivers of blood to flow. Khorne's disdain for underhanded methods regardless robs it of more rampant escalations to its influence. The destruction of entire planets almost mundane in how regularly the Blood God feasts upon such destruction. Requiring little justification for the methods made to spill blood, whether wrought by the teeth of a chain axe as a result of rabid, violent compulsion, or a desperate thrust of a combat knife made to defend one's family from harm, the blood god smiles nonetheless. Killing begets killing, whether prolonged or brief, and none can ever ascertain the true extent of savagery unfolding upon singular planets, let alone the expanse of the galaxy. Its most fervent disciples, satisfied with nothing less than their panoplies or bare skin being drenched in gore, the snap of bones and screams of the dying are a veritable symphony to the ears of the Blood Legions. The end of battle heightening their sense of contentment only for a moment. The promise of future battles is all that prevents the thralls of the Blood God from descending into frustrated, mindless rabble. Sorcerers and tricksters, abhorred by all but the rarest of exceptions within their ranks. Many cultists use harsh methods upon their ilk, who attempt to fight their foes with even, ranged weapons. Caring not for rituals, sacrifices, or altars to its glories, the mere demonstration of Khorne's ideals is enough to give praise. The Blood God's blessing, bestowed to those who kill with little fanfare, nor fought for their victims. Forfeiting self-control for power, worshippers of Khorne are the most fierce opponents the Imperium can face in battle, especially when confronted by fallen Astartes, such as the World Eaters, who, clad in near-impervious armor, with no sense of self-preservation, are a terrifying foe indeed. Though Khorne's influence is felt most keenly within the realm of the living, it is typical of this entity that when its subjects are not deployed to the galaxy at large, infighting is endemic within its own domains. Honing their expertise for slaughter within a veritable playground of murder, the Fortress of Khorne. The Blood Legions of Khorne never tire of battle, even when their blades dull and their armor deteriorates. Rending one another into bloody ribbons, as war cries fill the air of such desolate killing fields, none but the furnace demons tending to the Blood Legion's war materials are given respite from such skirmishes. Even the lowliest Khornate demon, replete with horns, arterial red skin, claws and fangs aplenty, the sight of even these basest entities are a terrifying sight for the mortal soldiery of humanity. Bargaining their services to cultists within the material realm in exchange for plentiful slaughter, many a heretic has summoned such hordes of demons to unleash their rampages within civilian populaces, ill-defended outposts, and Underhive gang territories. Often turning upon those who brought them to their destination once battle has ended, only those of greater might are respected by these lesser demons, often in the form of traitor legionaries or their demonic superiors. Typically known as Bloodletters, these rank-and-file members of the Blood Legions wield hellblades assembled at the base of the Throne of Skulls. Only those who have proven to be more than cannon fodder, rewarded with sparse armor as reward for their blood shed in battle. On occasion, riding juggernauts into battle, these blood rushers act as the Legion's shock cavalry and trample their enemies underfoot when amassed at full strength. Regarded as brass behemoths, soul crushers, and even Khorne's unstoppable rage by mortal soldiery, such is their reputation for carnage, that only the bravest of warriors can resist the impulse to flee at the sight of such charging, minor demon engines. The canine fleshhounds, feasting on those that suffer the bite of their fangs, notorious for their speed. Targeting such beasts proves difficult, even for psykers, due to the collars of Khorne around their necks, which protect them from warp sorcery. Heralds of Khorne, the mightiest of the lesser demon ranks, their pronounced horns and battle regalia set them apart from their bloodletter kin. Embodying the primal war tribes of Terra's past, clad as they are in chains and totems, these proven veterans of many campaigns have won their right to command, not by birthright, but deeds made in battle. Their presence spurring their junior ranks to new heights of battle lust. Each fights for the right to ascend to the rank of a greater demon, should they not fall short of the Blood God's expectations. Ascended heralds, known as the Bloodthirsters, the first among the greater demons of Khorne. Their terrifying visage resembles humanity's mythological depictions of demons, bearing credence that humanity has either molded such entities from their consciousness, or simply illustrated past interactions with them. Clad in the brass armor of Khorne, while wielding whips, two-headed battle axes, or firestorm blades, each takes to the skies with leathery black wings. The impact of their hooves upon the earth, typically the last sound heard by their victims, before falling to the strikes of their weapons. Demon Princes of Khorne are those mortals personally favored by the Blood God, achieving apotheosis through its influence. Known as Blood Princes or Bone Lords, these hulking behemoths stride into battle as the embodiment of their patron's strength made manifest. each the victor of a million untold glories, unwavering in their dedication to serve the will of the Lord of Skulls. Benefiting from the most bountiful gifts given by their fell patron, few are their transgressions made through millennia of service, as they butcher and maim all who oppose the Blood God's ideals. Waging war upon any and all foes in the name of the Blood God, the Khornate demon princes delight in wars of untold slaughter, as they themselves compete to outdo their peers. Caring not for their origins, whether they be labor serfs, jaded Astra Militarum soldiers, or vaunted space marines, should their outpour of blood spilling be commensurate, all are made equal in the name of the Blood God. Utilizing a variety of demon engines to intensify the slaughter, though units such as the Bone Reaper, Cauldron of Blood, Death Dealer, Doom Blaster, Skull Reaper, Lord of Battles, and Tower of Skulls have proven to be rare sightings, others remain a fell omen seen throughout the stars. The Blood Slaughterers of Khorne carve their enemies to shreds, using 4 dual-bladed chain weapons which act as limbed appendages. Their spider legs capable of scuttling swiftly across the battlefield and able to scale sheer vertical walls. Blood Thrones of Khorne act as chariots for their heralds, known as Rendmasters. The sight of such an abomination, ridden by such a gleeful murderer, devastating to morale, as its brass wheels mangle all unfortunate enough to stand in their path. The Skull Cannons of Khorne, acting as a ranged variant of the Blood Throne, the Bloodletters, chained to its construction, fire the screaming flaming skulls of their enemies, using the artillery fastened to its back. The multi-legged Great Brass Scorpions dwarf their contemporary Defiler and Decimator models due to its total dedication to the Blood God's will. Its agile frame, capable of piercing entrenched positions, causing its inhabitants to escape into killing fields as a preferable alternative. The colossal Lord of Skulls, acting as a super heavy variant of demon engines in service to Khorne. Only the skill of warpsmiths and their black forges within the Eye of Terror can construct such abominations. Its humanoid upper body, combined with immense treads of its lower half, the chassis of this Goliath of war is often festooned with the butchered remains of its foes, as its great cleavers of Khorne carve swathes through enemy lines. Its arm-mounted Hades Gatling gun, or Skull Hurler, supported by hull-mounted Gorestorm cannons, Ichor cannons, and Demon Gore cannons. Only thanks to the soul of a greater demon of Khorne trapped within are such armaments brought to bear. Adhering to the strict hierarchy of the Blood Legions, only the strongest of martial skill bear the right to command. Such simple yet effective organization, allowing Khorne's minions to claim the largest swathe of the realm of chaos. Bloodletters and their ilk, following the orders of Bloodthirsters without question. Should their commanders fail in their duty, such lesser spawns shall take the opportunity to tear them asunder, once cast amongst their midst by the Blood God. The legions of Khorne, led by a Bloodthirster and divided into 8 cohorts. Each in turn is led by a Herald of Khorne or Demon Prince. Each cohort comprised of 8 packs of Khornate demons. Each Bloodthirster divided into hosts of descending renown. Imperial records can divine only 4 of such hosts. The weakest of the hosts, the 8th Bloodthirsters of Unfettered Fury, typify some of the greatest generals of the Blood Legions, whilst the 6th Bloodthirsters of Insensate Rage rampage through fortifications and battle lines to sow mayhem. The 3rd host, the Wrath of Khorne, target champions of enemy lines to duel in single combat, whilst the mightiest 1st host contains the most devastating scions of Khorne, such as Karbanda, Skarbrand, and Arngraf, the Lord of all Bloodthirsters. Each legion's master dedicating their forces to a particular method of warfare. The Red Tide Legion assembles masses of Bloodletters to swarm enemy positions en masse, often supported by Fury demons of Chaos Undivided. Hellfire Legions attack at range using Skull Cannons, Soul Grinders, and on rare occasions, Lord of Skulls demon engines. For though the Blood God abhors ranged warfare, the integration of vast melee support contingents settles his ire. The Brazen Thunder Legion, emphasizing the need for maneuverability and speed. The Blood Thrones, Blood Crushers, and Fleshhounds which fill their ranks, hunt down all who flee from their devastating advances. The Burning Books of Khorne, contained within brass bindings written with the blood of slain foes, the only true resource to study the armies of Khorne. Such grimoires are prized by Inquisitors and Chaos Sorcerers alike, hoping to identify the weaknesses of the most prominent demons of the Blood God. To imagine the domains of the Lord of Murder is to behold the visions of humanity's notions of hell itself. The roiling tides of the warp coalescing into an environment of crimson and fire. Vast, blood-soaked hellscapes, each more grim than the last. At the core of Khorne's dominion, the Blood God surveys its fiefdom atop its carrion throne. Delighting in foolhardy invasions of its territories by both demonic or mortal pilgrims, storms ravage its environments as gale force blasts tear stone from their moorings, exposing the seeping wounds beneath. Gouts of molten lava spill from its pores as earthquakes continually shift its landmarks, forming bulwarks and blades of earth to jut into the horizon. Boiling rivers of blood flow freely throughout the terrain, fed by the endless battles waged by bloodthirsters, which vent their need for battle. Each conquered domain of such entities swiftly divided apart by new rivers of blood which seep from the depths. Swallowing all who survive the onslaughts made above ground, the land itself is as much an opponent as those who crawl upon its surface. The gouts of blood spilled, evaporated by active volcanoes which spew liquid metal from their craters. Every doomed act of aggression made in the efforts to gain favor from the Blood God's ever-present gaze, its lowliest servants carve out minor glory within the outermost domains, known as Khorne's Rage. Ringed by volcanoes several hundred kilometers in height, this nigh-impenetrable border to the kingdoms of Tzeentch, Nurgle and Slaanesh block all but the most resourceful invaders. Smothered in toxic ash from the brass-belching mountains, the snap of crimson lightning, which mimics the crackle of Bloodthirster's whips, forebodes the fate of those arrogant enough to attempt to brave deeper into the Lord of Skulls' kingdom. The base of each volcano producing weapon components from the demon forges of Khorne. These workshops craft all conceivable war materials, from axes, swords, armor, and even demon engines. Each cog, weapon housing, blade and component transported far from the hazardous environments from which they were conceived. Any attempt to assemble such materials are destined to failure, whether from environmental or demonically induced hazards. Each master of a Hellforge infusing the souls of mortal invaders into their anvils, screams of torment ring out with each hammer blow made to hone the fell weapons of Khorne. For every worker subsumed in molten lava or crushed by debris, more shall spawn from the blood pits to replace them. The furnace demons benefiting only from the knowledge that none save for the Blood God's minions dare to tread within their domains. Rife with warp energy, the currents of the pits mutate the land itself to their whims, never remaining in place for long before drifting into pastures new. Formed in as little as moments to as long as millennia, the blood pits formed of split and seeping warp storms that coalesce require a new blood harvest of the material realm to capitalize on their formation. Each soul that perishes during such campaigns feeding the blood pits, once mixed with molten brass and the murderous intent of Khorne, give rise to new bloodletters and lesser fiends of chaos until they have run dry to begin the cycle anew. The rivers of blood, scarring the territories of Khorne like jagged veins and arteries. These kilometer-wide ravines transport the blood of slain foes to the capital. The iron-rich vapor, caused by the intense heat casting pools of red across Khorne's domains, those unfortunate enough to fall into their canals, often melt upon impact before forming bubbles to spit forth what remains of their bones onto the shore. The Lake of Slaughter, the result of such rivers emptying from waterfalls atop a vast gore-laced gouge in the landscape. This expanse, far larger than any ocean of the mortal galaxy, spews untold horrors from its depths. Forming leviathans, dragons, and other impossible beings made of ichor and sinew, the bloodthirsters of Khorne battle such abominations for sport before toppling their dismembered forms back into the lake from whence they came. Yet by the shore of such a lake, the most infamous of all landmarks of the realm of chaos is that of the Brass Citadel, its looming presence laced with billions of skulls, obscuring all trace of its foundations. The enormous black outer wall of the citadel, patrolled by fanged guardians watching for all signs of intruders. The flesh hounds within its walls roam its skull yard, searching for the scent of spilled blood. Soaring within the skies above, bloodthirsters listen for invaders, their otherworldly hearing passing through the red lightning of the clouds before they swoop down to end such naive souls. Within the center of the Brass Citadel sits the Blood God, his power so great that should it ever rise to take up arms against its kindred, it is doubtless capable of ending them in a single strike of its Sword of Eons. Content not to interrupt the balance of power between the four, each time Khorne rises to quell insurgents to its realm, it nevertheless does not enact retribution for slights made against its dominions. Returning to take its seat upon the throne of skulls so as not to end the great game too soon, beyond the bastion stair and the 8 iron pillars, Khorne commands its blood legions to do its bidding. Patiently adding the spoils of war to its rivers of blood to burgeon its armies to ever-increasing size. The being that has expunged civilizations beyond counting is in no rush to inflict the final killing stroke. For in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and the Blood God reaps a steady harvest of every death, which adds to its tally. The last figure showed the greatest deviation from Talos' own image, and that alone set the Night Lord's lip into a disrespectful sneer. This figure, unlike the others, was in motion as if unable to remain still. It swayed from foot to foot, hunched over, akin to a beast ready to leap, breathing rasping from its helmet's vox speakers. The armor itself was red, the red of a body's darkest blood, edged in bronze so filthy it looked as dull and worthless as copper. It was still his armor, but lacking his familiar trophies and sporting fresh battle damage, as well as the repainted surfaces and bronze modifications, made it an unnerving sight, seeing his most treasured possession so twisted. "Make it good," he said, teeth clenched. The figure reached up, removing its helm with shaking hands. The face it revealed was a mess of scars, burns and bionics, framing a malevolent grin.
"I am Karnev,"
it grunted through the toothy smile. "I know that name."
"Yes, your brother Uzas cries it as he takes skulls from my throne."
"He is one of your slaves." Talos couldn't tear his eyes from seeing his own face so damaged. Half of the head was replaced by oil-smilled bionic plating that fused with raw, inflamed skin at the edges. The flesh that remained was blistered and uneven from burn scarring, or darkened by badly sealed cuts from what must have been horrendous blows to offset the enhanced healing of Astartes' physiology. Most unnerving of all was the way he swayed, hunched over and ape-like, with the same dead-eyed grin Uzas wore when trying to maintain his attention on a difficult conversation.
"Blood
it wheezed.
and souls. Blood for the Blood God, souls for the Soul Eater."
"Is Uzas your slave? Answer me."
"Not yet. Soon he will stand as a champion among my warriors. But not now. Not yet."
"Whoever summoned you to win me to your allegiance has wasted their time. This is almost laughable."
"Time is short,
The figure still grinned.
and such sights I have to show you."
Talos had more insults to offer, more rejections to voice, but he found he couldn't speak. His lungs locked, feeling like slabs of quivering stone behind his fused ribs. It was a savage echo of the moment he'd been poisoned, and he felt the same sensation as the meat within his body shuddered, stealing his breath. This time, as he fell to his knees, his breathless wheezes weren't curses, but laughter. The warrior of blood was fading. Talos knew in the world of flesh, his lungs were purging the taint that brought him here.
"Witness my gifts.
Karnev said, desperate now, ferocious in his eagerness.
See the strength I offer. Do not abandon this one chance."
"Go back to hell!" The Night Lord grinned through bloody teeth, and vomited black mist into the nothingness. This has been a tale of the malevolent thralls of chaos, read by the Remembrancer. Though the disciples of the Blood God are too far gone to redeem themselves, what little remains of their nobility is regardless rooted in values which transcend their bearing. Sneering at the thralls of rival pantheons as cowardly, honorless curs. Though many aspersions can be hurled at the followers of Khorne, deceit is not one such attribute. Honor is a virtue often eschewed, for it is seemingly inconsequential when administered in daily life. Yet should you observe with a keen eye, its effects can be witnessed. So treat those you keep as friends and those you regard as foes with respect, for on occasion, such roles may be reversed, and the manner in which you carry yourself shall be what is remembered. For those that keep to their word, adhere to their promises, and abandon the enticements of treachery, are held in the highest esteem.